Where are you, really? I'm not talking about your GPS coordinates or the city printed on your driver's license. I mean, where is the you that feels like you? The one you've been carrying around your entire life. The one that reacts when someone calls your name. The one that feels pain when your heart gets broken. The one that smiles when a memory sneaks up on you and makes you warm inside. For most of us, it's not even a question worth asking. Of course, I exist, you think? I'm here, listening, watching, feeling, deciding. But here's where the story gets strange. When neuroscientists decided to hunt for that self we all believe is sitting somewhere inside our heads, they came back with something unsettling. They scanned brains in high-tech machines. They traced electrical pulses through intricate neural highways. They mapped the chemistry of thought itself, and they couldn't find you. Not the you thought was in charge. There was no throne, no control room, no master operator flipping switches. What they found instead was movement, networks, feedback loops, electrical storms flashing and fading like fireflies in the night. And in between those flashes, silence. Not the kind of silence you get in a quiet room, but a deep, cosmic stillness. This is not the kind of thing we're taught to think about in everyday life. We're busy. We've got bills, kids, errands, jobs, politics, drama. We live as though there's a little person up in our mental headquarters, sorting mail, answering calls, making decisions. But if you zoom in far enough, if you go looking for that person, you find that they're not there. It's like going backstage at a magic show, expecting to see the magician. But there's only smoke, mirrors, and props left behind. What you thought was the self turns out to be more like a stage performance than a permanent character. And that discovery can shake you. Because if there's no you in a place you've always imagined, what does that make? Well, you. Most people don't want to go there. It feels too destabilizing, like pulling a thread on your favorite sweater. But the truth is, ignoring it doesn't make it less true. And once you catch a glimpse, you can't unsee it. The Buddhists have been saying it for thousands of years. There is no fixed self. The modern neuroscientist says the same thing, just in lab coat language. And yet, we cling to the idea of a solid, central me because it's comfortable. We've been taught from the first time we're asked, "What's your name?" we're given a label. That label becomes a story, and that story becomes the cage we live in. Without realizing, the door has been unlocked all along now. For you think this is about tearing down your sense of identity just for the fun of it. Let me be clear, this isn't a motivational pep talk, and it's not a nihilistic doom message either. It's an invitation to see something that most people never see about themselves. Because the moment you realize the self you've been protecting all your life might not be what you thought. Thai doesn't just change how you think, it changes how you see. Imagine you've been wearing tinted glasses your entire life. Everything you've experienced, every heartbreak, every triumph, every argument, every quiet morning coffee has been filtered through those lenses. Now imagine taking them off for the first time. The world isn't what you thought. You aren't what you thought. And that realization is terrifying and liberating at the same time. You might imagine that if the self isn't real, there must be some other things, some deeper observer hiding behind the scenes, a watcher behind the eye, a thinker behind the thought. We've all been sold that story in one form or another. But here's the unsettling part. Even that observer isn't what you think. That calm, articulate voice in your head, the one that seems to hover just outside your thoughts, the one that comments on everything you do it, not your true awareness. It's not the divine witness you might have been told about in a meditation class. It's something else entirely. It's a construction, a shapeshifter, a collage of everything you've ever heard, read, feared, hoped for, and believed. It's the mental equivalent of a TV host narrating a reality show that doesn't need a narrator in the first place. And yet, because it feels separate from your day-to-day chaos, you believe it's the real you. That voice, the one you're hearing, even as you listen to. This comes in 3 main flavors. First, there's the narrator that labels your life as you live it. You're anxious. You're doing great. You're so present right now. Then there's the critic, the relentless judge that hammers you with every mistake. That was stupid. You messed it up again. You'll never be enough. And finally, there's the hype man, the voice that builds you up, pushes you forward, gets you hooked on the idea of progress. You're transforming. You're becoming unstoppable. This is your big breakthrough. These voices might seem different, but they're all playing the same role, keeping the illusion of you alive. Even in your quietest moments, they creep back in, describing the silence, analyzing the peace, evaluating the stillness. It never stops. The problem is, most of us take these voices at face value. We assume they're some part of our higher self. But they're not. They're echoes. They're recordings. They're an intricate remix of our upbringing, our culture, our history, our fears. And if you can see them for what they are, even for a split second, something cracks. You start to notice that you, the real you, are not those voices. In fact, the real you might not be a you at all in the way you've always assumed. It's more like the space in which those voices appear. And once you see that, your relationship to every thought, every emotion, every moment changes forever. Let's step into the lab for a moment, not the dusty high school science lab. You remember, with broken Bunsen burners and the smell of old textbooks, but the kind of lab where reality itself gets tested. The kind where scientists stare at data, not to invent new gadgets, but to answer the most unsettling question of all. What's really going on here? One of the strangest experiments in modern physics, the one that makes even the most grounded scientists scratch their heads, something called the observer effect. On paper, it sounds simple. The act of observing a particle changes the outcome of what that particle does. But if you dig into it, you start to see why people can't stop talking about it. In the famous double-slit experiment, when particles, like electrons, are fired at a barrier with two slits, they behave one way if nobody's watching, and another way if someone is. Without observation, they spread out like waves, creating a pattern that says, I can be everywhere at once. But once they're measured, once there's an observer, they collapse into a single path, like they suddenly decided to pick a lane. Now, here's where it gets weird. It's not that the scientist's eyes are magical. It's that the very act of measurement, of interaction, changes what's possible. In other words, reality isn't fully real until something experiences it. If you're already getting chills, you're not alone. This is where people start asking the big, slippery questions. Does this mean consciousness creates reality? Are we somehow shaping the world just by paying attention to it? Physicists argue about this all the time, because the truth is, the math works, but the explanation is still up for grabs. Some say it's just a quirk of quantum mechanics. Others think it points to something deeper, that the universe isn't a fixed, static machine, but a living, changing event that unfolds in relationship to awareness. If that's true, then every moment of your life isn't just happening in some cold, mechanical way, co-created in real time. The morning sun that hits your face, the sound of your friend's laugh, the way your heart races before a big decision, none of that exists as a fixed object sitting out there, waiting for you to bump into it. It's more like a song that only starts playing when you walk into the room. This flips the way most of us think about life. We imagine reality is like a movie that's been recorded start to finish, and we're just watching it frame by frame. But the observer effect suggests that maybe the film isn't even developed until the camera awareness shows up. It's tempting to turn this into a self-help slogan. See, you can manifest your dreams just by imagining them. That's not quite what the science says. This isn't about wishful thinking. It's about the undeniable role of observation in shaping what's real. And here's where the connection to you, the you that you've been trying to find, comes back into focus. In the same way, particles behave differently when they're observed. Your own mind shifts based on what you're paying attention to. That so-called observer inside you isn't just a passive spectator shaping the game as it watches. The problem is, if your observer is clouded by that inner commentator, by fear, by habit, by the stories you've been told, then what you're shaping might not be what you actually want. Think about this in terms of your everyday life. You're having a conversation with someone you love, but your inner critic is busy analyzing every word you say, wondering if you sound smart enough. That commentary shifts the way you listen, the way you respond, the way you experience that moment. Or you're walking into a big meeting and your hype man voice is pumping you up so hard you start forcing your confidence instead of just being present. The simple act of observing your own experience through the lens of those voices changes the reality you inhabit. And if the voices are loud enough, they can drown out the deeper, quieter awareness that doesn't need to narrate, criticize, or hype. This is where neuroscience and quantum physics start shaking hands. In neuroscience, they talk about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on what you pay attention to. Every time you focus on something, you're strengthening certain neural pathways and letting others fade. It's like carving trails through a forest. The more you walk one path, the easier it becomes to walk it again. In quantum physics, they talk about the collapse of the wave function, the idea that out of all possible realities, the one you see is the one that becomes real. When you put these two together, you start to see that your attention is not a throwaway resource. It's creative, it's generative. It's building the world you live in from the inside out. And here's the thing that catches people off guard. The observer effect works whether you know it or not. You don't have to be a monk in a mountain temple or a physicist with $1 million lab to experience it. Every single person is participating in this dance between observation and reality every single day. The question is, are you aware of how you're doing it? Are you choosing what to observe, or are you letting your inherited voices do it for you? Because if your inner commentator is the one holding the camera, then the reality you're capturing might be more of the same old story you've been trying to escape. So here's the turning point, the moment where all this theory, all this talk of quantum particles and inner voices stops being abstract and starts being personal. If there's no fixed self sitting in a control room inside your head, if the observer you've been trusting is just a patchwork voice made of memories, culture, and repetition, then what's left? This is the part that scares people, because it feels like stepping off a cliff with no safety net. But the truth is, when you take away the illusions, you don't fall into nothing. You fall into everything. You fall into the raw, unfiltered awareness that's been here your whole life, quiet, still, vast. It's not a thing you can point to. It's not a character with a name. It's more like the open sky. Thoughts, emotions, sensations, they're the weather. They come and go, but the sky itself, it doesn't change. It just holds it all. When you realize this, really realize it, not just think it, the way you live changes. Getting so tangled in the passing storms, you notice the critic's voice come in, and you don't have to fight it or prove it wrong. You see the hype men show up, and you can smile at it without letting it push you into overdrive. Even the narrator loses its grip because you understand that the labels it's giving you are just labels, and without the constant pull of those voices, something new starts to emerge. You start noticing what's actually in front of you without the filter. The smell of your morning coffee becomes richer. The sound of your friend's voice becomes warmer. The quiet of a Sunday afternoon feels like it's soaking into your bones instead of rushing past you. This isn't the kind of transformation that comes from forcing yourself to be positive or from chasing endless self-improvement. It comes from seeing the game for what it is. I'm choosing not to get lost in it. But here's the tricky part. Your mind will try to turn even this into another story. It will say, I get it now. I'm the sky. I'm infinite awareness. And suddenly, your ego is wearing a spiritual costume. You'll find yourself chasing the feeling of being awake the way you once chased success or approval.
Yes.
Okay, it's just another wave in the weather. The point isn't to hold on to some perfect state, to keep noticing. Keep returning to the simple fact that you are not the voices in your head. You are the space they appear in. And that space isn't fragile. It doesn't need defending. It doesn't need fixing. It doesn't even need a name. Think back to the observer effect in physics, way particles shift when they're watched. Your life works the same way. When you watch your thoughts with awareness instead of judgment, they behave differently. When you bring attention to your own patterns without trying to crush them, they start to dissolve on their own. The act of seeing clearly is transformative all by itself. You don't have to wrestle your mind into submission. You just have to stop believing every character it throws at you. And when you do, you notice something powerful. Reality feels lighter. You're no longer carrying the weight of being someone all the time. You're just here, participating in the mystery of a moment that's always new. This is why some of the wisest people, scientists, mystics, artists keep circling back to the same truth in different words. The world you live in isn't fixed. It's responsive. It's alive in relationship to your awareness. You're not a separate, isolated mind trapped in a machine. You're part of the unfolding itself. And the more you see that, the more you realize that nothing is as solid as you thought. The fears that felt like concrete walls start to look more like smoke. The identities you clung to start to feel like costumes you can take on and off. The future stops feeling like a rigid track you have to run and starts feeling like a field you can explore. Here's the beautiful, unsettling, liberating truth. The self you thought you were isn't the final story. It's just a chapter. And the moment you see through it, you're free to read the rest of the book in a whole new way. The observer effect doesn't just happen in physics labs. It happens in the space of your own awareness every second. You don't have to force it. You don't have to make it happen. You just have to watch, because the act of truly observing doesn't just change what you see, changes you. And once you've experienced that shift, even for a moment, you'll never look at yourself for the world the same way again.